Thank you. I'm joined today by District Attorney Rachael Rollins, Police Commissioner Willie Gross, members of the Boston City Council, members of my cabinet that are here with us today. I want to begin by recognizing the overwhelmingly positive things that happened yesterday in the city of Boston. The vast majority of the people that came out were passionate and they were peaceful. They gathered from all across our city and all across our differences to remember George Floyd and say that his life and all black lives have profound value equal to any other life. That racism and injustice are wrong and that must end. That predators of violence and hatred must be held accountable. We heard young people speaking from the heart. We saw faith leaders providing wisdom and guidance. We saw all kinds of people who simply want to put an end to racism and make positive change in our country. I don't want anything to take away from what they accomplished and the impact that they had yesterday. I want to say to all of those peaceful demonstrators, your words, your testimony, your call to action move me. And you are moving our society forward. And we will continue that conversation and lead that progress because that's who we are in Boston. But what happened in downtown after the protest ended was an attack on those values. And it was an attack on our city and its people. I know that it was frightening for many who were there. It was frightening for those watching it unfold on TV or following it on social media, especially for the families of the police officers, first responders, and all of the people that went in town to peacefully protest. Police officers were hit with sticks and bottles and fireworks. Cruisers were torn apart and set on fire. Stores were smashed up and robbed. In all, last night, 9 police officers were taken to the hospital and dozens more were treated in the fields. 18 bystanders, civilians, were also transported to the hospital by Boston EMS, and I want to thank Boston EMS. Untold economic damage was done to businesses downtown in the Back Bay and other parts of our neighborhoods. The damage was done to some of our most cherished public spaces, monuments to abolitionists, to Civil War veterans, and even the back of the Massachusetts 54th Regiment Memorial was among those defaced. That memorial is sacred to Black Boston and to our country. This was the very last thing that our city quite honestly needed. Some of those stores have been hurt badly by the pandemic and are just on the verge of coming back. They're fighting to survive. Their workers are fighting to support their families. First responders are taking extra risks with every interaction that they have. Thousands of city employees are working around the clock to protect our city from a pandemic. I want to offer my sympathy and support to all of those who were hurt by last night's events. We have to understand that the Black community is in real pain, struggling with lifetimes of unequal treatment and putting themselves out there to try and make a change. We will continue to stand with them and we'll continue to push for that change. And I want to be clear. We're going to keep Boston safe so that Boston continues to be a place where you can make your voices heard. We want to protect that right. So I'm asking everyone to respect our city and our community. Respect those who are protesting peacefully. Tens of thousands of people that protested peacefully yesterday. Let's keep our city safe. To the people of Boston, This is your city. This is our city. This is a city where we respect all of our neighbors. To all the folks that came in from the outside, don't lose sight of George Floyd's murder and what demonstrators are trying to do. People are tired. People are fed up. The actions of some last night hurt that cause and hurt a community that is already hurting more than anyone should ever have to bear. People showed up yesterday to express their sadness, their frustration, and their anger. Hundreds of thousands of people in our neighborhoods right here in Boston are angry as well and want change. I'm certainly going to do everything I can to keep our city safe. But I also am not going to let that distract us from what George Floyd's memory means, what Ahmaud Arbery's memory means, what Breonna Taylor's memory means, what Tamir Rice's memories means, Trayvon Martin's memory means. This has been a difficult time, and it remains a very difficult time. We can't allow violence to take away our focus. I want the Black community to know, I hear your message, and I will continue to be your ally. And I think I can speak for everyone behind me. I want to create more spaces for people to have peaceful outlets. This is my priority. Those who want to participate in vigils can express their message and do so safely. And they should be able to do that safely and not worry about having a brick thrown at somebody and hitting them in the head. That is not what this is all about. I want our police officers, firefighters, and EMTs to know that I am grateful, and Boston is grateful, for your courageous and compassionate service last night and every night. And I want to thank the many surrounding departments who supported our efforts, as well as members of the Massachusetts National Guard. I want all of the people of Boston to know that we are strong, we are a united city, and we will not be defeated by this or any other challenges. We will heal from this, and we will come back stronger. And we have come back every time obstacles have been thrown in our way. We will stand with the injured officers and their families. We will be there for the damaged stores, just as we have been there for small businesses throughout this entire crisis. We're going to continue to fight the pandemic with every ounce of energy and resourcefulness this great city possesses. And we will stand with our Black community as a city where Black lives are valued and where positive change is always our goal and our guiding light. I want to thank you, and God bless the city of Boston. And now I'm going to ask Commissioner Gross to come on up and say a few words.
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon, everyone. Let's talk about yesterday. It was mostly peaceful. Thank you to the media for showing the world that that protest started off peacefully. We had people from everywhere, from inside of Boston to greater Boston, from all over our Commonwealth, to come in and peacefully protest in homage of Mr. George Floyd. I can tell you right now, I'm very proud of that. I can tell you right now, I'm very proud of our community stakeholders that led groups of young Black men and women and all of God's children to downtown Boston to peacefully protest. That's what should be done. That's what should be done. I got to remove the mask. That'll help. And here's what I'm talking about. We know what's going on in our great nation. We know about the murder of Mr. George Floyd. And we know that decades and decades of people dying at the hands of the executive branch of the United States, if it was happening back then and it's still happening now, then voices have to be heard and Black lives do matter. Those voices speaking out against murderous acts that were committed in Minneapolis have to be heard and move us along to where we can better serve the community together, police and the community policing. And wow, what a great job in paying homage again to Mr. George Floyd. Unfortunately, individuals showed up not with a peaceful intent on mind, but with being disruptive. That's not paying homage. The Boston Police Department, we pride ourselves in working with the community. We learned the lessons from the past, and we learned lessons from tragedies that are going on today. And again, we applaud everyone that protested peacefully, but unfortunately others came hell-bent on destroying our city, our great city, our destination city. And we, along with others, there were people from the community as well, that were like, no, you cannot destroy our city. I commend the Boston police officers. I commend the officers from the outside agencies, the law enforcement councils. I commend the National Guard, state police, and everyone that said, no, this can't happen here in Boston. So yeah, it was rough for a while out there last night as the officers were attacked and actually tear gas was thrown at us. Vehicles damaged, over 21, a cruiser burned, several officers going to the hospital. And trust me, the 8 mentioned that went to the hospital, there were several more that said, this is not going to happen in our city, and no one's going to take over our city and burn it to the ground. So thank you, first responders. Thank you, EMS. Thank you, Boston Fire. Thank you, National Guard. Because guess what? They're a part of our great Commonwealth, and we're going to protect our Commonwealth. As well, I have some numbers here that are very important. We have 53 total arrests and 1 summons. Why do I even want to mention those numbers? Because I want to break a negative stereotypical view and perception that even though others protested peacefully, that those hell-bent on destruction just came from the inner city of Boston, and that is not the case. So the breakdown is 27 arrested from Boston, outside of the city 24, and from other states 2 arrested and 1 summons. I'm telling you folks, the negative actions will not deter us from remaining together as a community. I say from this day going forward, this should strengthen our resolve to work together, no matter what. Whether it's BPD, the communities, the greater community, let's start working together. Let's leave a legacy for those young men and women that attended and protested peacefully, so that when they, the future leaders of Boston, will have something to reflect on positively and strengthen their resolve for being the great leaders that they're going to be. So going forward, we will have partnerships that will protect this city. We will have partnerships that, again, help us communicate with the communities that we serve, so that we don't have great tragedies occurring like there was in Minneapolis. Again, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you to the elected officials. Thank you to the community. Oh, man, you really stepped up. Excellent job, again, paying homage. But we have work to do, folks, so let's remember this. The whole nation began here. We will set the example and show that we can work together in making sure that this destination city, this start of our nation, is a shining example for all when it comes to our human and civil rights and our ability to express them. Thank you.
Now I'd like to invite our District Attorney Rachael Rollins.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Commissioner. I am exhausted. As your elected district attorney, we have looked around this country and seen police officers, people that Black lives pay taxes to fund these positions, shoot us in the street as if we were animals. I feel as if my heart does certainly go out to the officers and civilians that were harmed last night, and we never wish that upon anyone. Those police officers showed up to do their job. They were pulled in on mandatory overtime. We don't know what their opinions are with respect to what people were saying or doing. We would never wish them harm. We should be proud that we have a commissioner in Boston who uses his voice to say this is unacceptable, that we have a sheriff in Suffolk County that uses his voice to say this is unacceptable. I'm a proud member of NOBLE, the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Officers. We issued a statement about this. But I want to remind you, the commissioner is management. And the commissioner is not the rank and file police officers that go out every single day and interact with our overwhelmingly poor Black and brown communities. And people are fed up and exhausted. I want to thank the Chelsea Police Department, the National Guard, all the mutual aid that was brought to our beautiful city of Boston. But this burning rage that you are seeing when you turn your TV on or you hear in my voice is real. People are fed up. And to the white community that is now waking up to see this rage, we have been telling you this forever. We have been saying this since Colin Kaepernick took a knee. We have been saying this for decades, and you didn't listen to us. You didn't care until you saw a video. This city was never burned on May 24th. This city wasn't burned in April or March or 2019. It was burned after what happened on Memorial Day. But this is not just about George Floyd or Ahmaud Arbery or Tony or Christian or Omar. And although Omar and Christian lived, it is a small glimpse into a CNN reporter being arrested and a Black man who happens to really like birds being criminalized by an entitled white woman who called the police and thinks that you are her personal servants. People are disgusted and outraged, and they should be. And it is completely ironic to have to say to you, please don't be violent, please keep your voice down, please be silent and comply with all of the police's requirements, when in fact it's those very people that murder us with impunity. But that's where we are right now. And currently, as we speak, there are 3 sessions of the Boston Municipal Court that are actively involved with my staff and the hardworking men and women of the Boston Police Department prosecuting individuals that disgraced George Floyd's memory by looting and burning police cars and throwing objects and debris, and in fact even shooting at officers, I am told, in a drive-by situation. That is unacceptable. You will be prosecuted and held accountable. But I will also say that buildings can be fixed, and I am happy that those officers, I hope, will make it out of it, as will the civilians. There are lives that were stolen and people that were lynched and murdered, and they are never coming back. I hope that you take a minute to reflect what a terrible, terrible situation we are experiencing right now. Thank you.
What I'd like to do now is take a couple questions. I would appreciate if I could get a couple questions about the peaceful protest today, and not focus on the events that happened later in the evening, because 20,000 people came into Boston, or from Boston. They marched. They let their voices be heard. They're not done. There's more work to be done, and I don't want to give satisfaction to the people that came into our city and caused damage last night. So I'm open up to questions.
I do want to ask, we are, of course, in the middle of a pandemic. Restaurants are even open again. Why was the protest allowed to go on? I get the anger, but why was it allowed to go on knowing that some of these bad actors can infiltrate what you call the positive message?
The question is, because we're in the midst of the pandemic, why was this allowed to happen yesterday in the midst of the pandemic, understanding potentially that there was going to be some bad actors, according to the question, in the crowd? We believe in free speech. We believe in people's right to protest, people's right to march. We're not going to get into a situation where maybe some leaders in Washington might think that might be the right thing to do, shut these down. That's not who we are and what we're about. And I think it's very important. There's been protests and speeches in the city over the years that I didn't want to move forward, but unfortunately we allow people the opportunity. On a side note, what we did yesterday was our public health department actually contacted some of the organizers, and we were actually giving out masks yesterday to the marchers to make sure the marchers were protecting themselves. I mean, there's a real, it seems like coronavirus is taking a back seat right now, but it's very much front and center. Those protesters and those demonstrators that walked last night, there's probably a large majority that do not have the virus and did not have the virus. And they exposed themselves last night to the virus. And when you go back home, you take that virus back into your house. And everything that we've been talking about for the last 3 months here, and keeping our numbers of cases down, and trying to keep people safe, didn't go away yesterday. And I think that it's important, incumbent upon all of us, to continue to remember that. This virus has killed over 600 Bostonians, has taken the lives of thousands of people from Massachusetts, has killed over 100,000 Americans. It's very much front and center. And the message to my message is to take care of yourself and be careful, because you'll take that virus in your house, and the damage that might have been caused last night, you'll do far greater damage to your own family if elderly people get sick and pass from this. So thank you for that question.
Based on what you saw last night with looters at times running around unchecked, do you see any failures in your leadership as mayor?
The question is based on what we saw last night. I'll sum it up. Do I see any failures in my leadership as mayor? No, I don't. This is something that the crowd that showed up last night, and as the protesters and as people were marching, more and more people kept coming and coming and coming. You can't. We don't want a police state here. We want a balanced approach. I think that's the whole intent behind the march. Was to have a respect and understanding of police-involved shootings as one of the pillars of the conversations yesterday. I'll let other people judge me on the rest of it, but no, I think our job is to keep people safe. The question is, did this get bigger than anyone anticipated would? Absolutely, no question about it. And generally, when you have, in my experience as the mayor, when you have marches, there's always some agitators in the crowd, and it's usually a handful. And last night was more than a handful.
Are there demonstrations planned for tonight and tomorrow? Are you worried? And what is the conversation around police presence for those?
The question is, there's other demonstrations planned for tonight and tomorrow. Am I worried? Certainly have some concerns about not the demonstration, but what happens after the demonstration. The organizer tomorrow night, been in contact with them. We're going to have a conversation in a little while about tomorrow night, and it's about what happens afterwards. And that's really the messaging that the organizers need to get to the crowd, and all of us need to continue to work on that messing. So, one second.
What role did police body cameras play in keeping some checks last night? And are you using that footage to find out what may have gone wrong?
The question is about body cameras. Many of our officers have body cameras on last night, and I'm not going to comment right now on investigations and cases. That's something that can happen later.
Mayor, so we have 53 people who were arrested. Do you expect that number to increase as you investigate the shooting that took place, or is that number at that point yet?
The question is, we had 53 people arrested yesterday. Do I expect that number to grow after investigations? That's something that we'll address at a later time.
Mayor, will the police approach change at all for the events tonight and tomorrow?
The question is, will the police approach change from tonight for differences? The police had a great, I thought, plan yesterday and a great approach. I've heard lots of compliments. There's lots of comments on social media about the police presence. I've spoken to elected officials about it. People had their opportunity and exercised it all the way to the common without much of a police presence. On the periphery there was. The police had to be activated when it got violent last night.
A question about, we have seen many protests in this city for years and years and years, but one thing we often see, for instance, during the marathon is maybe this is more for the commissioner, is dump trucks sort of parked at on ramps, and you see trash barrels taken out. But we didn't see those. We did not see any sort of on-ramp.
Yeah, let me just address that. It's a different strategy. Yeah, we're using a different strategy. I mean, if we needed dump trucks to block intersections, we certainly would. I think it's important that any marches that are being planned, I really do think it's important for the organizers to talk to the police department to at least let us know what the route is, so that we can put the proper safety precaution in place to save people, so we don't get a situation like we saw in Charlottesville a couple years ago.
What's being done, you hear a lot of talk about outside agitators coming and hijacking events. So what's being done now to identify who those people are and to keep them off the streets and away from these protests that are going to happen tonight?
The police are working on that right now. This is not just unique to Boston. This has been a constant theme across the country. I've been in constant contact with mayors from around the country, Chicago and New York and Louisville, Kentucky, and Denver, Colorado, and other places, and we're all dealing with the same issues. So we're trying to figure, as we move forward, how do we deal with that?
The city was shut down at one point last night. Did that help or exacerbate the situation?
You'll have to talk to the MBTA about that. But they made a decision because there's so many people in town to just shut down the downtown stations. Not North Station was open and the surrounding ones, just the perimeter, because it got a little scary in downtown Crossing and those areas with protesters and people breaking windows and turning violent. They were on standby. We had them on standby all night. We'll get all that information out to you when we have breaking it down. The police are still working on it with the district attorney's office. I don't want to go too much into that and let them decide that.
Are you planning on attending any of these protests that are coming up this week?
No. I think it's really important for me. What I have to do is focus on keeping this city safe, but our number one priority is coronavirus. We've been working on the coronavirus for the last 3 months, and it's about keeping people safe. I have been in contact, certainly, in having conversations around Mr. Floyd's death and how we can move the conversation forward even more than we have in the city, dealing with the systemic racism, dealing with health inequities, dealing with lack of opportunity. As I said many times from this podium, this virus has even magnified, intensified the need to do more work in the disparities in those areas. That's what this has put a big spotlight on it. We knew it was there, but I think more people are paying attention now, and I think that we have to continue that work. One last question.
I wanted to ask about riot here. Maybe it's for you or for the commissioner about the police officers.
Yeah, I'll answer it. Yeah, they didn't have it on last night until they needed it. If you saw many of your stations, by the way, covered. Thank you for covering the march. It was great. A lot of reporters asked a lot of people questions that had a chance to talk about what their concerns were, and I think that was a great conversation to have, and I appreciate that. The police. The helmets they had on last night during the march was the bicycle unit riding the bikes. You have to wear a helmet. And, you know, obviously when it got trickier later in the night, I'm going to make sure that our first responders, our police officers are safe. I'm not going to put them into a crowd without the proper equipment, when people throwing bricks at them and shooting fireworks off at them and shooting gas canisters at them, things that all of your news stations report on last night. All right, thank you. I'm done, thank you.